Mark never thought he'd be here, standing on the edge of everything he believed in, feeling his world unravel over a single decision. He had built his life on loyalty, routine, and family, a steady foundation he thought Sophie had shared. But here he was, blindsided by betrayal, feeling like a stranger in his own marriage. It had started just a few days ago, with Sophie insisting they go to Veronica's party. Mark had known Veronica for years through Sophie. She was vibrant, unapologetically bold, and always at the center of attention, the kind of woman who attracted chaos and adventure. She was Sophie's best friend from college, and their lives had taken very different paths. Veronica was single and free-spirited, while Sophie had married Mark and settled into a life that revolved around their two children, Nate and Mia. "Come on, Mark," Sophie had coaxed, her voice carrying a hint of excitement he hadn't heard in years. "We need this. A night out, just us away from the house and the kids." Mark, busy with deadlines and conference calls, had barely looked up from his laptop. "I don't know, Sophie. You know I have that big presentation on Monday." "Please," she'd said, a pleading tone in her voice. "When's the last time we did something fun, something different?" He paused, then looking at her. She was right. He couldn't remember the last time they had stepped out of their usual routine. He was aware, too, of how tired she'd looked lately, her once vibrant spirit dimmed by the responsibilities of family life. He couldn't deny her request. She'd been asking for a little more spontaneity for a while now. "All right," he'd said, mustering a smile. "Let's go. One night won't kill me." She had beamed, her face lighting up with excitement. For a moment, Mark felt a flicker of hope, thinking maybe this night out would rekindle the spark they had lost somewhere along the way. When they arrived at Veronica's place, Mark noticed immediately that this wasn't the kind of party he was used to. Veronica's home was grand and filled with people he didn't know, all talking, laughing, and dressed more provocatively than he expected. The room was dimly lit with soft, warm lights, casting a glow that felt both intimate and unsettling. As he surveyed the scene, he noticed how the couples interacted. Touches lingered a bit too long, glances held a little too intimately. He shrugged it off at first, chalking it up to his own insecurities. But as they moved through the crowd, he felt Sophie's grip on his arm tighten. She seemed more at ease here, laughing easily and engaging with everyone around her, as if this were a place where she belonged. Mark's unease grew as the night wore on. The drinks flowed, conversations turned flirtatious, and he noticed a few people disappearing together into back rooms. He pulled Sophie aside, whispering, "Is it just me, or does this feel a little different?" Sophie's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Mark, relax. It's just a party. Try to have a little fun." He tried to brush off the tension, but as they joined the others in the living room, something strange happened. Veronica's husband, David, stood at the center of the room, holding a large glass bowl filled with keys. "All right, everyone," David called out, his voice booming over the crowd. "It's time for the raffle." A ripple of excitement swept through the room. Mark looked around, puzzled, until he noticed women stepping forward, each of them dropping a set of keys into the bowl with smiles and knowing glances at each other. He glanced at Sophie, who avoided his gaze, her face flushed. "What's going on?" he whispered, his unease deepening. Sophie finally met his eyes, her expression shifting between excitement and hesitation. It's just a game, Mark," she said, her voice almost too casual. "Everyone picks a set of keys, and whoever's keys you get, well, you spend the night with them." Mark's stomach lurched as the reality sank in. "You knew about this?" he asked, his voice low and strained. She shrugged, looking slightly annoyed by his reaction. "Mark, don't be so uptight. It's just one night, one time. We've been in this routine for years. Couples do this all the time to keep things fresh." He felt as if the ground had just been pulled out from under him. This wasn't the woman he thought he knew, and this wasn't the life he thought they shared. "No, Sophie," he said, his voice filled with a calm rage. "I'm not staying here for this. We're leaving." But Sophie didn't move, her expression hardening. "Mark, you're overreacting. I just want to do something different, to feel alive. You used to be spontaneous, too." "Spontaneous?" He felt the betrayal deepen as she looked at him with impatience rather than understanding. "I thought I was enough. I thought our life was enough." She looked away, her face a mixture of frustration and defiance. "It's just one night," she said almost dismissively. Mark could feel the distance between them growing, an unbridgeable chasm opening up. "It's more than just one night," he said, his voice hollow. "It's about trust." He gave her a choice, then one final chance. "Either we leave now, or you stay here, but don't expect me to be waiting for you." Sophie stared at him, her gaze cold and unwavering, before turning back toward the crowd. She chose to stay. Mark stumbled out of the house, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. As he walked down the street, the enormity of Sophie's choice sank in. He had never felt so betrayed, so dismissed. His mind replayed their years together. Their first meeting, the early days when everything felt new and vibrant, when she looked at him like he was her whole world. They had once promised each other forever, vowing to weather any storm together. And yet, here he was, blindsided by a storm he didn't see coming. The drive home was a blur. When he finally reached their quiet suburban house, he sat in the dark for a long time, staring at the family photos lining the walls, each one a reminder of the life he thought he'd built. A life that felt, in this moment, like a cruel illusion. In that dark silence, Mark felt the weight of his own choices. Had he been too focused on work? Had he taken her for granted, assuming she would always be there? He remembered moments when she had seemed distant, but he had brushed them aside, telling himself that every marriage went through phases. He had never thought it would lead to this. But then there was Sophie. He knew she had struggled with the demands of motherhood, often feeling confined by the roles she had embraced. He had seen her longing for more, her desire for adventure, but he hadn't thought it would lead her down this path. She had always been the free-spirited one, the dreamer, and he had loved that about her. But now, that same desire for something more had driven a wedge between them. The following morning, Mark woke to a series of missed calls from Sophie. He ignored each one, his mind still clouded by the pain of her betrayal. When she called again, he finally answered, his voice cold and detached. "Mark," she began, her voice soft, almost pleading. "I'm sorry about last night. I just wanted something different, something exciting." "Something exciting?" Mark's voice shook with anger. "So you decided to throw away everything we built together for a night of excitement? Do you have any idea what that did to me? Please, try to understand," she said, her voice breaking. "It wasn't about you. I just needed something more. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you did," he replied, struggling to keep his voice steady. "You hurt me in a way I didn't think was possible. You chose a stranger over me. You chose a night of fun over our family." She was silent, and he could almost hear her grappling with the weight of her decision. I wanted to feel alive again, Mark. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, but it does mean something," he said, his voice firm. "It means you're willing to throw away our marriage for a fleeting thrill. And I can't live with that." He hung up, feeling an emptiness settle over him. Sophie's choice had shattered the foundation of trust they'd built, and there was no going back. Mark sat in the dim light of his hotel room that evening, staring at his phone, the recorded conversation from the night, before playing over and over in his mind. The pain was still raw, a constant, gnawing ache that wouldn't let him think clearly. He had once trusted Sophie completely, but now, every word she'd said at that party felt like a knife twisting in his chest. With each passing hour, he felt a surge of anger rising within him, a rage he'd never experienced before. He knew he needed to take control, to protect himself and their kids from the chaos Sophie had unleashed. The next morning, Mark called Kyle, his best friend since college and a successful family lawyer. Kyle had been through his own rough patch with his ex-wife and knew better than anyone the devastation of betrayal. He picked up on the first ring. "Mark, what's going on? You sound terrible. Things with Sophie, they went wrong. Really wrong." Mark took a deep breath and laid it all out. The party, the betrayal, Sophie's refusal to leave, and the hollow, painful words she'd said afterward. Kyle was silent for a moment, and then he spoke, his voice steady and resolute. "I know it's painful, Mark, but listen to me. You need to get ahead of this. We're going to make sure you're protected, and that you don't lose more than you already have." Mark felt a strange sense of relief, a glimmer of hope that he could find a way through this. What do I need to do? First, gather evidence, Kyle instructed. Anything that shows Sophie's intentions, her behavior, her disregard for your marriage. Keep everything you have. That recording from last night? Don't delete it. And start documenting every interaction you have with her. Mark nodded, mentally bracing himself for the steps he knew he had to take. Kyle continued, outlining what Mark needed to do to protect his assets and prepare for a custody battle. Each step felt like a confirmation that his marriage was ending, but he knew it was necessary. The morning after the party, Sophie woke up feeling empty. The thrill of the night before had faded, leaving behind a hollow ache she couldn't ignore. She rolled over, reaching for her phone, hoping for a message from Mark. But there was nothing, no calls, no texts. For the first time in years, Sophie felt truly alone. She replayed the events of the night in her mind, trying to justify her actions. But the weight of what she'd done sank deeper. She had betrayed not just Mark, but also the family they had built together. Desperate, she dialed his number, waiting as it rang, her heart pounding as she prayed he would pick up. When he finally answered, his voice was colder than she had ever heard. "What do you want, Sophie?" he asked, each word heavy with anger. "I'm sorry, Mark," she whispered. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I needed something. I needed to feel." To feel what? Sophie. Alive? Excited? He interrupted her, his voice laced with bitterness. "And you thought that would be worth throwing everything away? Our marriage? Our family?" Sophie tried to explain, but Mark's silence cut through her words. She could feel him slipping away, the wall between them growing stronger. She begged him to come home, but he only repeated the cold reality of her choices. That evening, Sophie sat in the empty house, looking at the photos on the wall, images of her and Mark, smiling with their kids, memories of a life that now felt like a dream. The loneliness pressed down on her, and she realized the gravity of what she had sacrificed. She could feel herself breaking, regretting every decision that had led her to this moment. Mark met with Kyle later that week, discussing the next steps with a clarity and focus he hadn't felt in days. Kyle had arranged for a financial advisor to help Mark protect his assets, securing his savings and documenting everything he and Sophie had jointly owned. They spent hours combing through every detail, preparing for the fight ahead. Kyle encouraged Mark to file for divorce, emphasizing the importance of acting quickly. "The sooner we make it clear where you stand, the better. Custody, finances, the house, you need to be in control of this." With a heavy heart, Mark agreed. He filed for divorce the next day, setting in motion a series of legal steps that would reshape his life and his family's future. It was a painful process, but he clung to the hope that he could rebuild his life, even if it meant leaving behind everything he had once thought was unbreakable. Meanwhile, Sophie's life began to unravel. News of the divorce reached her quickly, and the reality of what she'd lost hit her with full force. The home that had once been filled with warmth and laughter now felt cold and empty. She tried calling Mark, begging him to reconsider, but he refused to answer. When she received the official paperwork, she felt a wave of despair. She hadn't thought Mark would go this far. She hadn't imagined he would leave her. She realized, too late, that her impulsive decision had cost her everything. The custody battle was brutal. Mark presented the evidence he had gathered, including the recorded conversation, highlighting Sophie's betrayal and disregard for their family. Her actions that night became a focal point in the case. And as the legal proceedings unfolded, it became clear that the court favored Mark's stability and commitment to the children. Sophie fought back, but with each passing day, her resolve weakened. The more she tried to justify her actions, the more she was confronted with the harsh truth of her decisions. The house, the kids, the life she had known, all of it slipped through her fingers, a reminder of what she had destroyed in a single night. In the end, Mark won primary custody of Nate and Mia, while Sophie was granted limited visitation. The house remained with Mark, a sanctuary where he could rebuild his life with his children, free from the shadows of betrayal. Months passed, and Mark found a new rhythm in his life. He devoted himself to his kids, creating a stable, nurturing environment that helped them heal from the turmoil of their parents' separation. He poured his energy into work, But he also made time for himself, rediscovering hobbies and interests he had set aside during his marriage. He found solace in the quiet moments with Nate and Mia, reading bedtime stories, playing catch in the backyard, and watching them grow, their laughter filling the house once again. Mark realized that, despite everything he had lost, he still had something worth holding on to. With time, Mark began to feel at peace. He had faced betrayal and heartbreak, but he had come through stronger, more resilient. He knew now that he deserved happiness, that he could build a life of his own, one where he could be true to himself and his values. As for Sophie, she struggled to adjust to her new reality. She tried to rebuild her relationship with her children, reaching out to them during her limited visitation days, hoping they would forgive her. She worked hard to prove that she could be a responsible mother, that she could learn from her mistakes. In her moments of solitude, Sophie reflected on her choices, realizing that her pursuit of excitement had led her down a path of destruction. She had lost her family, her sense of security, and the love of the man who had once meant everything to her. But she was determined to rebuild, to find a way forward, even if it meant starting over from nothing. Sophie's journey was one of humility and self-reflection. She recognized the damage she had caused and sought redemption, not just for Mark's forgiveness, but for her own sense of worth. She understood now that happiness couldn't be found in fleeting thrills, that true fulfillment came from commitment, trust, and the love of family. Mark and Sophie's lives had changed irrevocably, shaped by choices that could never be undone. But as time passed, they each found a measure of peace. Mark's weekends with Nate and Mia became sacred, a time when he could cherish the bond he shared with his children. He had lost much, but he had gained a deeper understanding of himself, a strength he never knew he possessed. Sophie, meanwhile, found herself on a path of redemption. She learned to value what truly mattered, realizing that her search for excitement had cost her the stability she once took for granted. Though she knew she could never undo the past, she worked tirelessly to rebuild her connection with her children, hoping that, one day, they might understand the lessons she had learned. In the end, they both emerged from the wreckage of their marriage with a renewed sense of purpose. Mark's resilience and Sophie's humility became the foundation of their new lives, separate yet forever intertwined by the family they had once shared. The night that had torn them apart had also forged within them a strength to move forward, to heal, and to embrace the future, no matter how uncertain.